ahead and get started. So I think just looking at who's on the call, I think you know most of you guys, but just a quick introduction. I'm Michelle Goldberg. I'm the president of Gold Ribbon Rescue and also the head of our training and behavior team. And one of the things that we as a board have discussed at length that we want to be able to provide to our community of our fosters and people that adopt from us and people that are looking to adopt from us is we want to be able to provide more education and the tools to help set you guys and the new dog that you will bring into your home for success, for better success. And I see a lot of you on the call have already adopted dogs from us, have fosters currently in your home, or have adopted or are fostering or have fostered. But so we partnered with Debbie Puckett. She is one of the training partners and owners of the company is called See Spot Behave. We've actually already had them engage with several of our foster dogs, as well as I know that people have adopted have used them as well. And so Debbie has a long list of credentials and a lot of experience in the dog training world. I'm going to turn it over to her because I want her to tell you guys what her credentials are. I don't want to try to mess that up, but I want her to tell you her background, her experience, and then we're going to jump into the meat of the presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm really excited to be working with Gold Ribbon Rescue because, you know, there are so many rescues out there that are not as well organized. They are not as well run. They don't have an enthusiastic community. You guys have really built something special. And so I just love being a part of it. I'm actually going to begin sharing my screen now so I can tell you a little bit of background, but I'm going to give you guys a little heads up. Towards the end of this, I'm going to ask you to write some stuff down. So if you don't have paper and pencil, while I'm talking about my background, see if you can grab some. It's not imperative, you won't be left behind, but if you have something you can write on them with, that'd be helpful. Right. There we go. All right. And I'm going to just send a little reminder out during the presentation. This is for everybody. You're welcome to have your camera off if you feel weird about having the camera on you. If you talk, turn your camera on so we know who's talking. And also, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself so that background noise doesn't interrupt or interfere with some folks being able to hear. There we go. Okay, so here's what we're working with today. We're going to come from a different perspective on this. So the title for our work today is called A Gentle Landing, which is talking about integrating a new dog into your household. And so when Michelle and I talked, we kind of went over what new fosters or adopters face when they bring a dog into their house. Here's my background. I'm a nerd, just to give you all that. Here's some pictures so you can see what's going on in here. Is that I have pictures of all the animals, save one, that I've trained, that actually have done some training. I've taught them something on cue. A praying mantis, mice and rats, squirrels. My beta fish, I could train to do spins and also an obstacle course inside his fish tank. I've trained wild and domestic parakeets. I've even trained a hedgehog, which was amazing. And of course, dogs and cats. And because my previous career was a high school teacher, I also trained adolescent humans, which really was the hardest of all of these. Just because they are, you know, they're interesting. So my background is actually education. I have a master's in curriculum and instruction. And about 18 years ago, I started working with dogs and doing dog training on the side and during the summer. So all these letters mean this. The first thing is my master's degree. The next one is that I am a certified behavior consultant. I'm also a certified professional dog trainer. I'm a fear-free certified professional, which means we work very hard to make sure the dogs are comfortable and safe and they're actually enjoying what's happening. And I'm also an American Kennel Club evaluator. But what I'm most proud of is that I get to work with people. It's really fun that we get to work with all these animals, but honestly, it's working with the people and through them, the animals that I love the most. My background in training came from a trainer that was not a fear-free trainer. They were balanced. So I got to see some of the practices I would never do. And so from my perspective, everything we do is positive, it is safe, it is gentle, and it's fear-free. So here we go. What to expect tonight. There's no quiz. Even though I'm a teacher, there's no quiz, there's no final. You're not going to be asked to pass anything. But the theme tonight is giving new dogs the best chance to adjust to an unfamiliar environment, letting them have a chance to heal, to adjust, have a sense of security, and transition from what could have been a very tough environment to peace and comfort in your place. The topics we're going to cover are some things that you may have heard of before. You may be a master of this, and it might be new to you. Decompression, we'll talk about. We'll talk about managing the environment and introductions to dogs and cats, other pets, and other housemates. We'll talk about setting up a routine, and finally, we'll create a planner for you so that the next time you have a new dog in your household, you have all this done. And if you have a new foster with you now or a new dog that you've adopted, you could actually go back and retrofit this stuff. So a couple things. The chat is open. So if you want to chat to other folks, down in the far right corner, there's a box with lines in it. You can click on that and chat back and forth. It's like passing notes in class, but you won't get in trouble. There's also Q&A. Q&A, when you click on that, sends me a question. And so if you think of a question while we're going through this and you just really need to write it down, put it in Q&A and I'll address it as we can. The planner that we talk about in this lesson will be sent to you or be made available to you by Michelle. So we've got that. And when we finish at 7:30, if you still have questions, we'll let people who need to go, and then we'll stay for a little after party, and I'm happy to answer your questions. All right, let's get into it. This is fun part. So why does integration matter? Well, I'll give you a story. Down here, you see these little names, Mary and Mitzi. I was about to have a new dog come in as a foster, and I had to work. So when this dog, Mitzi, arrived, unfortunately, I hadn't shared the plan with how to integrate Mitzi into our household with my family members. And so Mitzi was dropped into the living room with all of my other dogs, and just running around trying to figure out how she's going to handle this new mess. And unfortunately, when one of my housemates was cooking, she had the dogs all milling around her in the kitchen while she's messing with food. And if you can imagine, what broke out was a fight. So Mitzi is a Chihuahua. She attacked Mary, who is actually a pit bull mix, a Chow Chow pit bull mix. And unfortunately, Mary grabbed Mitzi by the neck. And so without planning, because we didn't plan, because we didn't set up this, my family didn't know how to handle that either. And so unfortunately, Mitzi's first couple of hours in the house ended up in her being injured, not severely, thank God. But from here on, now Mitzi hates big dogs. And I'm working with her to desensitize her to big dogs. So that's a pretty severe example of if integration doesn't work, or if you don't integrate, it can go to that level. And yet integrating is actually so much easier to do than fixing the problems afterwards. So we're going to work on each component of integration. And as we go, if you have questions, pop it up. You can also raise your hand, and I'll see you raise your hand. That's down at the very bottom, is a little hand sign. So integration builds trust. It helps your dog actually, and I'm going to say your dog, meaning your foster and or adopted dog. It helps them decompress and adjust, helps them be able to kind of shake off their past and have a new, fresh look at their future. So first thing we're going to cover is decompression. This is from the perspective of a behavior consultant. If I had my wish, if somebody came to me and said, what's the one thing you want fosters and adopters to do? I would say, give the dog a week where they get very little interaction in the household, by you, by your family members, and by your dog, so that they can decompress. Why decompress is important is that the dog is arriving under real stress. They may well have lost a family member and they're grieving. They may be a breeder and they're grieving their puppies. They may have come from a home that was unstable, and so they have some fear. If they were in a shelter, they may be really wound up and stressed by the noise and the smells and the emotions that are in the shelter. And so they come into your household, and even though you're really excited, and maybe even the people around you are really excited that you've got this brand new dog in the house, the best thing for the dog is it to be given time to just relax. And ironically, if you give that dog time, they will warm up to you faster than if you push connecting with them. So decompression helps with things like stress behaviors, separation anxiety, destructive behaviors, barking, pottying in the house. A lot of those behaviors that you see when you have a foster or newly adopted dog, those can be prevented by giving this dog time to adjust. Okay. Also, if you go right into teaching the dog or training, they can't learn when they're stressed out. And what I compare this to is, imagine you're about to give a speech and I say, hey, I want you to memorize something real quick. Well, your stress about standing in front of a crowd to give a speech, make sure you don't memorize that thing. It just gets in the way. And so even training the dog, simple training, can be very difficult for them because they're dealing with all their emotions. So really, how long do I wish you could decompress the dog? Well, sometimes you hit the jackpot and you get a happy-go-lucky, bouncy dog that's really excited to be in your house. And that dog should decompress for about 3 days. All the rest, the ones that are shy, a little suspicious, worried, sad, shut down, even reactive, you need to give them a week. Now, what does it really mean? Okay, it means that they're going to get minimal petting, not much talking to them, very little direct eye contact or engagement, like trying to play with them, very little handling, unless the dog approaches you for handling. And you're not going to take them on any outings. Actually, I had one client that when the day she got her dog from the shelter, they went to a very, very busy brewery. And the dog was on leash with these people that it didn't know and was in the middle of a chaos of a brewery and other dogs. And for some reason, now the dog doesn't want to go to places. So we had to work on, that impact of that. So even if you have this excitement and you want to take them out for a walk, you want to take them out to the park, don't. Really, you're putting them on a diet of stimulation. You want the stimulation to be very low. So you'll hear people talk about ignore the dog. And really, it isn't sad to ignore the dog. It's giving the dog a chance to breathe. And it will build trust very fast. Okay. You'll find that if you can also do this with dogs, brand new dogs that you meet, if you don't give them a lot of eye contact, don't try to touch them, don't really talk to them, in very little time, they're like, hey, I'm here. Hi, I want attention. And you'll see that come out with your dog too. You might have heard the saying of 3-3-3 with dogs. In 3 days, they're decompressing. 3 weeks, they're kind of figuring out the environment. And at 3 months, they're starting to really relax and be who they are. That really is just a thumbnail. It's really just to show you that you need to give dogs time. It really doesn't work like that. It's kind of an average. You might have a dog that warms up in 1 week. You might have a dog that takes 6 months to warm up.
Okay. Debbie, I was just going to interject. We use the 3-3-3 a lot, but we say that this is an average.
It is.
And some dogs can adjust sooner and some dogs can take longer. But give the expectation of at least the first 3 days.
Absolutely.
And don't expect the dog to adjust sooner than that time frame.
Yep. And that 3-week window is kind of when they're minding their manners because they are a little worried about the rules. They don't know what the rules of the environment are. So you'll find you think you have this one personality of a quiet, happy little dog. And then about 3 weeks in, you start seeing that they might be nervous or they're showing reactivity. And you're going, what changed? And really what it is that was the original dog's personality and behavior. They had just kept it flat to try to feel safe in the environment they were in. So after about 3 weeks, you start seeing, the honeymoon period ends, and you start seeing these behaviors. That's what the dog came with. It's not like you broke them or they suddenly changed. It's just that they unveiled. They took the mask off. So the honeymoon's over. That's a good point, Michelle. Thank you. All right, we're going to talk about space time and working with your dog and helping them get into your space and relax right away. So when we talk about management, we're still talking about decompression. Decompression includes having your dog on a regular regimen, keeping routines predictable, making sure that you are going the pace the dog can go when you're changing things, and that you're really keeping things pretty quiet and restful. Management of space, you've got a little dog here behind the baby gate. You've already figured out your household. You figured out where the baby gates need to go. You figured out which dogs go in which spaces, where the cat goes. We'll talk about that stuff. You figured out that maybe some doors might be prone to the dog running away, and you've secured that, but you're also making sure that the dog knows where their zone is and they feel comfortable in that zone. And of course, before you bring the dog home, you're going to remove all items that might be tempting, to eat, steal, chew, or resource guard. And they may resource guard with you. They may guard with the other pets or other people in the household. And you want to provide safe things they can have, like chews and licky mats that have very low pressure that they can have in their confined space and not have pressure from other people or animals for it. And I'm going to reiterate, you're going to keep interactions with the dog very low. And I have on here, let the dog approach you, and don't hug. Never let anyone hug your dog because your face is right in theirs, and dogs interpret that as being trapped. Try not to hover. How are you doing? It's so cute. They're going, ah. And really don't correct them. And what I mean by that is, if they soil in the house, it is useless to tell them no, to, take them outside and make them go potty there. They don't know the rules. That really is an accident. And correcting them helps them decide that you might be unsafe. You might be a person they should be worried about. So what you do is just manage what it is. Oops, they were outside of their confined space, or oops, I didn't take them outside enough, and you move forward. This is very easy. You guys will actually be able to do it in no time at all. And it's creating a sanctuary for your dog. What it is deciding where in your house that dog is going to be able to curl up and be left alone. And then you're going to make that space just as comfortable and beautiful and soft and smelling good as you can, so that they choose to go to that space. And the rule for a sanctuary is that nobody goes to the dog to pet them, play with them, give them a toy, give them a treat, or lure them out of their sanctuary. So they know they can go in there and be left completely alone. It is different than their crate, because the crate is a confined space, and it's different than having them, go to place and stay there. This is more like, here's your haven. And you just want to pick a place in your house that you can see the dog, they're not being isolated, and then create a cozy spot. So here are the elements of a sanctuary for the dog. You want to make sure you're managing noise. And so you want to pick a quiet spot, and you can actually manage noise by blocking environmental sounds with brown noise or white noise. I actually recommend brown noise. And you don't have.
What is brown? I'm not familiar with brown noise.
Okay, good. So this is going to test, I don't sing, but it's going to test my voice. Okay, so white noise sounds like this. It's like a hissing sound. Pink noise is in between. It's like. Brown noise sounds like an airplane or the ocean.
Oh.
Okay, and so brown noise is a little more comforting. And so dogs tend to respond to it better. And so you could actually, you don't have to buy a noise machine. If you have an old phone sitting around, you can hook it up to your Wi-Fi and put a brown noise app, or go to Spotify and they have brown noise, like 12 hours of brown noise, and just play it. So you can save yourself some money there. The interesting thing about brown noise is you have to have it loud enough that it blocks out all external sounds. It's gonna blast it. And what's interesting then is that it's actually very comforting at a super loud level. You want the dog to not be able to hear what's going on out there. You want to actually block 90% of external noise with that brown noise. Now you can layer it with music. You can play brown noise and play music if you like. Music does not block the outside sounds. And ironically, dogs love reggae. I don't know if you saw the research, but a few years ago, they did some research on music and they love reggae. And so I have done brown noise and I layer one. I apologize. That's Momo. So I've layered it with music, and the effect of layering makes it so that they can't hear what's going on, and it gives them a steady rhythm to relax to. There are channels that have been made for dogs for relaxation. If you have Alexa, she has a classical music for pets station. There's a station called Through the Dog's Ear. So there's lots of music that being played for dogs. It's really important to give a sound buffer because they will worry about what's going on in the environment around them, and especially when you leave. Now, here's the other secret. Play that stuff when you're home so that the brown noise and the music aren't indicators that you're going to leave, because that actually becomes a predictor for separation anxiety. So anything you do in your household, for instance, you don't really watch TV during the day, but you turn the TV on before you leave, your dogs are going to start going, oh, the TV's on. I'm going to stress about her leaving. So the things you do for your dog when you leave need to be part of what your normal environment is. The next thing you want to kind of control in the sanctuary is scent. Now you can plug in a pheromone, which we've got the Adaptal, which is now from Thunderworks. You can plug in a pheromone diffuser. You really won't be able to smell it. Humans can't detect this pheromone, but it's a synthetic pheromone that puppies smell when they are nursing and in the nest with their mama. So it's a very calming pheromone for them. So I do recommend, if you have a nervous dog, that's something that you get. And they have refills. They're pretty neat. You can use scents to allocate space in the house. Dogs like lavender and chamomile. You want to make sure that they're not licking any oils, and you want to make sure any oils that you use are not synthetic. You want natural oils. And you can use scent to introduce two dogs. So if you have a lavender smell in your house, you want to put a little bit of lavender on your dog and on the new dog, and now they smell like each other, and that can reduce their suspicion of the other dog. So that helps too. And then finally, in the sanctuary, they should have coziness. They need to have a soft bed, blankets, something squishy and cozy. Please don't use towels. With towels, they unravel into string. And if the dog eats that string, often they can have intestinal binding problems and they end up being really ill, and it's a surgery thing. So usually don't give your brand new dog towels until you can decide if they're going to chew those things. You don't want them to get that in their intestines. Now, how do you get your dog in the space? You really want to make it alluring as opposed to confining them in it. So you can use food if they're interested in food. You can just show it to them and leave the noise on. Just have them go check it out. You can give positive associations, like put a toy in there, or just show it to your other dog and they see it. Don't let that other dog stay in it, but the dog might do observational learning and go, oh, that dog's not afraid of that space. I'll go check it out. So you want to make it something that's inviting as opposed to something you make them do. Okay. If you have a dog that's afraid of thunderstorms or wind or trucks or whatever, you can really use that sanctuary space to help them manage their fear of that. When there are noise events and you want to get them into their sanctuary space, it's okay to take them to it and turn up those sounds and sit with them and help them relax. The goal here is the dog learns to relax and self-regulate because there's a space in their environment that they can go. And just remember, don't let friends, housemates, children pet the dog, talk to the dog, or lure the dog when they're in their sanctuary space. That's their way of saying, I'm not interested in interaction right now. Are there any questions so far? All right, doing good. Okay. This is kind of controversial because there's a lot of human emotion around crates. So some people are really pro crates, some people are really against them. And I'm not going to prescribe a crate. What I'm going to prescribe is that the new dog is able to be safely confined and not have the run of the house so that you don't end up with damage to your house and a dog that's ingested something that's going to hurt them. So the sanctuary can be that. You can have baby gates, you can have an X pen, you can have a room that you can shut the door, or you can have a crate. And all of those, we're still going to do the same things to help the dog get used to that space. So you're going to take time, you're going to make it cozy, you're going to use the scents, you're going to use predictable timing and structure. You're going to ask them to go into their space when it's nap time. You're going to ask them to go into the space when maybe you're vacuuming. So you're going to keep giving them that space. And if it is a crate, it's something that's really important, is that it's a crate that's big enough for the dog, but not so big if it's a puppy that they have a place to go potty. So you can look at sizing for crates, but they need to be able to lie all the way down with their legs all the way stretched, both directions, forward and to the side. And that's the right size of a crate. And when they stand, they shouldn't be bumping their head on the top of the crate. They need a little bit of clearance.
A couple comments on this, and it is something that's an emotional topic for sure. Mm-hmm. And we struggle with this in making sure that we're educating people enough on the balance of crating, because so many of the dogs that get rehomed to us have been crated extensively.
Yes.
And so we certainly don't want them to go back into that same situation.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes the dog may be afraid of the crate, and proper crate training can take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but we also understand that we want the dog to be safe, and we don't want somebody's house to be destroyed. So it's finding that balance is definitely a struggle for us. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about too is, because I've seen this often, and there's controversy about it too. Should you cover the crate? Is that what's best for the dog? Should the dog be able to see? And the dog might be able to pull the cover in the crate. Maybe they'll leave it alone. So is that type of a barrier something that you recommend, or what are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you what, this is one of those infuriating, it depends. So I'll give you some it depends answers. Covering the crate can make it feel cozy and safe, and the dog feels like they're blocking, threats, and they can be safe in there. Also, covering the crate can make the dog feel very isolated. So you want to see how the dog is reacting when you cover it. If you cover it, they settle down and they snooze, good job. If you cover it and they're vocalizing, they're shifting, they're, pulling on the cover, then they may be nervous, they may be afraid because they've been in, like you said, they've been in confined space maybe all their life, and that really freaks them out. Or like you said about pulling the covers in, that can just be, I'm bored, and look, I'm just gonna, shred this blanket and pull it through, and it's a really fun game. So it really depends. And that what that means is, anytime you're thinking about where you're going to put the dog, you're also looking at supervising. You're not just going to stick them there and then that's it. So if you have your brand new foster in your house, or your brand new adopted dog in your house, and you need to go to the grocery store, and you have never tried to put them into a small room or a crate or X pen or whatever, you're going to have to get that and figure out what's going on before you leave for the grocery store. So if you just dump the dog in there and go, you are going to have, a dog that has either defecated in the crate, freaked out, popped the crate across the room, shredded stuff. So you want to make sure that you are introducing confinement way before you leave that dog isolated. And I agree with you on with the dogs, especially ones that have been in breeding or a long time in the shelter. Confinement can actually be the cause of distress. And so you can see that it's a weird balance. Do I confine this dog? They freak out. Well, then if I don't confine the dog, what do I have to do to the room to make sure they can't get into anything? And this is baby proofing. It's like having a toddler over again. What is it that they can destroy or they could get themselves into? Often having an X pen where they can see and they've got a pretty big space can solve that problem. They won't feel quite as confined. So I think the answer again, Michelle, is you have to get to know the dog before you leave them in any type of confinement. And I don't mean you have to know everything about them, but you have to know how they're going to react.
Thank you.
Yeah. And on the bottom of this, I see, crate is not a solution. This is not like, hey, the dog just stays there. It's a tool that you have to decide, is it optimally used or do I need to come up with something else? And I know that the behavior team at GRR has lots of solutions. And if you need help, you can ask them about it. All right. Well, what do you do when you're not home? We have to work. We have to travel. We have to go to the grocery store. Time alone is something that you want to wait before you have the dog alone. So if you live alone and you have you're fostering a brand new dog, you want to set up, when you get that dog, you want to set up time that you can be there for them so that they are adjusting before you get out the door. That could be a day. It could be take a couple days off from work. It could be you get it on a Friday and you have all weekend to work with the dog before you leave them alone again. But really, when you foster or adopt, you need to be there. And that is a really hard thing to say to people because really we're like, oh, please foster and please adopt. And yet that's part of the responsibility of saying yes to the animal, is being there for those first few transition times, first time in the house, first time in their space, especially first time meeting dogs, which we'll get to later. So here's a checklist. So weirdly, we do want the dog to have ID when you leave the house and leave them alone, because if they have separation anxiety and somehow get themselves out of the house, we can get them back. It's really important. I saw a husky and worked with a husky that ate through a wall, ate the whole wall. The gypsum board went through the wiring and out the outside wall and left the house right through the wall.
Wow.
That's really severe separation anxiety, but it was the first time he was left alone. And unfortunately, he was left alone really early. He was left alone about 6 hours into being in that house. And so, yeah, it was a pretty expensive fix for the person, but also the dog had all the stuff in his stomach and they had to have an operation to remove things from his stomach that he had chewed in. So have ID, right? Make sure you've got something the dog can do. I don't know about you, but if I were asked to stay alone in a space I didn't know and I had nothing to do, I would get more and more stressed as time goes by. And so give them something to do, a Kong, scatter feeding, some type of puzzle, a chew, a pizzle bone, collagen bones, probably not hard femur bones yet, because we don't know if they're going to try to shatter that and hurt their teeth. So I wouldn't recommend those yet. But there are lots of things the dog can chew and lick. And licking helps the dog relax. So if you can give them something like those frozen popsicles and they lick it, or a frozen Kong, that's primo. Licking for a dog is actually creating a loop where they're getting more oxytocin and more serotonin, and it calms them down. Licking is a self-soothing behavior. And so if you see your new dog licking like the bottom of the crate or licking their paws a lot, they're trying to soothe themselves. They're trying to calm down. And you can help them by thinking, what's in the environment that might be triggering them? Is the TV too loud? Are people too loud in the house? Something going on outside? Can I crank up the brown noise? Start working with the environment if your dog is licking a lot. If they're licking you a lot, it's the same thing. They're trying to self-soothe. They might also be trying to get your attention, or sometimes they're trying to get you to go away. So licking is an interesting thing. We'll talk about that when we talk about body language. Turn on the brown noise. turn and get the scent going, make sure they have their bedding. And when you leave, it should be a very calm departure. Okay, you might not say anything to the dog and you just walk out the door. If you make the departure exciting, oh, it's going to be okay, Molly. I'm sorry I'm leaving you. You're such a sweet girl. You're such a good girl. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. If you do that stuff, the dog's anxiety is like, well, what are you talking about? Like, why are you upset? Why are you worried? And it actually cranks their stress up before you even leave the house. And then you come home and you're like, oh my God, you're such a great dog, buddy. Yay. Now she's like, wow, I guess it was a dangerous adventure or something. And you're so excited, and it cranks her up again. The next time you leave, that loop will go, and they'll become more and more anxious when you leave and return. And that's kind of how you create separation anxiety. So even though it feels rude, you could just not say anything and walk out the door, or you could just say, bye, pup. And when you come in, hi, pup. And for the brand new dog, when you come in, don't go straight over to the dog and pet. Don't go over and fawn on them. Just say hello and go about your business. That will help them do much better. Separation anxiety is a learned behavior. And so the more you can create predictable, steady schedules, the more you give them calm emotions, you help them maintain their own calm, you can reduce the chance of them having separation anxiety. Okay. So I think this addresses some of the stuff you were saying, Michelle, about attention. The dog isn't spending all its time in a crate or in a shut room or whatever. You need to plan before you receive these dogs how you're going to give the dog time and attention. And you have to think about your current resident animals, that they aren't watching this new dog get tons of affection and then you see some jealousy happening. So you want to create some balance. But creating that predictability with a structured routine and giving them level attention, not peaks and valleys, then the dog will start to become more confident in the environment. So a structured day is actually one of the best things you can give this dog. If you've ever raised a puppy, you might want to think about how you did that with the puppy, because it's very similar. You're going to be setting up times that they get to go and play, times they get to go and potty, times they're getting attention from you, times they're taking naps, and you're going to organize that. So if you're working away from the house a lot, you have to think about what happens before work. And if you come home, if you're able to come home, and what happens after work, kind of have that set up before you even get the dog in. Once you get the dog and you see what their personality is, you might have to change that stuff, because you may have allowed for lots of playtime and the dog's like, meh, but really wants to be petted. So you're gonna have to balance based on the dog. Giving that structure of attention instead of lots of attention at the beginning and then it tapers off will help the dog with behaviors for resource guarding also. So when they get flooded with this new life of abundance, abundant attention, abundant food, abundant comfort, abundant play, and it comes in flooding, then when you taper off naturally, they start to guard, where's this stuff? Why am I not getting as much? So come in level, stay level.
So that's a good point, because we do see, and I think it's human nature. Somebody's bringing a new dog into their home and they want to make sure they have all the things, piles of toys. And, I think that's just kind of what we do. We want to make sure that they have all the stuff. And so they don't need to have everything all at one time. It's about a balance and spreading it out.
Correct. Yeah. And it's like, baby's first Christmas sometimes. You're just flooded with stuff. And that's just because you're excited about having that dog, and really just a few things, mostly things that are going to reduce their stress, like things to chew on, things to lick. Those are going to be the most important. The squeaky toy that they can destroy, and now you've got bits of fluff and things they've swallowed, I'd hold off on those. Honestly, I'd wait until the dog has kind of cleared a certain level of anxiety and they're acting steady to introduce those toys. The squeaks can be very anxiety triggering. Do you know, and then a side note, do you know in Europe, they don't have fluffy toys that squeak? They don't have squeakers in toys, because the squeakers actually trigger some really strange behaviors and get them kind of obsessive over that toy. And sometimes they treat it like it's prey, and it can create the prey chase cycle. So in Europe, you can't find a squeaky toy.
Interesting.
They just don't make them. Okay. Sample schedule. Now, this is the ideal schedule. So if you look at this and you're like, Debbie, you're nuts. My day will never look like that. This is an idea. You would sit down and figure something out like this for yourself, and you would set it up for what works for you and your family. And for some of us who are retired or have time, this is great. If you have people who are able to come in at midday, this is great too. But really, if you look at this, what we're doing is starting out calm, get up, you have a potty break, have a little sniff walk, okay? You transition calmly. If you have a really crazed dog and they're so excited to get out and just you crazy run around, don't start playing ball with them and crank them up. Because it sets them up for a day of high dopamine seeking, and they will end up being stressed throughout the day. Mid-morning enrichment, if you can, something that's a little snack, a licky mat, etc., a puzzle. And enrichment can be a little bit of interaction and training, so some training games that are mellow. You really want their brain engaged. They have to think about stuff. So puzzles are great. That reduces arousal. So if you've got a little bit of a hyper dog, those things actually put the energy into their brain instead of needing to run and be really hyper in the house. Late morning, if you can, nap time. Don't give them interaction. Let them learn to settle. If every time they come up to you, you're giving them the whoopee, whoopee, whoopies and petting them, you're keeping them cranked. So if you're working and it's midday, the dog comes to bump you, you're just going to ignore him, let him go to sleep. And I've seen so many people do this. The dog settles down to sleep and you remember, and then you start to play with the dog and amp him back up. Let them sleep, let them rest. In fact, dogs that come from the shelter, they need 3 days to sleep. They are exhausted because they have not been able to sleep in the shelter. Early afternoon, if you're able to, you're going to do some touch or training. I'm going to teach you some massage that you can do with the dog, some low pressure, really good vagus massage for them. And then you want to take a walk with a lot of sniffing. And if you're able to, if the dog is not a puller, you could do a long line walk where they get a chance to really, really sniff. And that'd be something I want you to talk to your behavior team before you did that, because long lines they can be difficult sometimes. And then when it's time to down regulate and get ready for, being at home, you also want to have them be calm, have something to chew or lick if they need to. Let them settle down. This is not the time to start rough and tumble, to start, wrestling with them or throwing toys. This is time to get them to relax so they can go to bed. So you see how that's kind of a stimulation diet? You are really working on calming this dog down, even if they're already calm because they internally are stressed. And if you have one of the really fun hyperactive puppies, this is going to help with that too. Okay, this is one of my favorite things. I don't know if you've heard about the vagus nerve, but it is a nerve that originates up in your brain and comes down kind of through your neck and your chest and goes into your digestive system. It's the longest nerve in the body. And it's really responsible for arousal, for stress and calming you down. And so if you can do massage that triggers the vagus nerve to do its job, you can actually really help your dog become calm and release their stress and anxiety. So this is ideal for the dog that has had some trauma or has been, a dog that was never really a pet. They were a breeder dog, a dog that just came out of the shelter, a dog that's reactive. This is the stuff you want to do to help them begin to self-regulate. Especially the really shut down dogs, those are really needing the massage to help them regulate their body. The vagus nerve itself is really your off switch. And so we're teaching them how to use their off switch by doing the massage. When you massage a dog you don't know or learning to know, you want to be really careful. You're paying attention to their body. You're paying attention to how they respond. And so if you are petting a dog on the chest, it's part of the massage, and the dog is looking away from you or licking their lip, they're saying, I'm uncomfortable with this. But if they have soft look on their face, they're yawning, they're melting, you're doing the right thing. They're enjoying it. And that's really what you want. You want the dog to melt into you and just relax. So here's how you do some of this massage. Okay. You are probably already doing it, just not with intention. With the ear, you want to rub the base of their ear where the cartilage is and kind of get real deep in there and kind of go circular movements. If you do it to yourself right now, you'll feel it. It actually triggers your vagus nerve and makes you feel calm. You just kind of wiggle your ear in circles there. You can also rub the tips of their ears here. Don't get down into the canal, but just at the very tips, you rub in a circle movement. They love that too. You'll start to see their eyes kind of close. They'll get very soft eyes. And you might even get a, oh, you're doing it right. Okay. If you massage their jaw, because often they have tension in the jaw, just like humans do. When you grit your teeth and you're stressed, you can massage their jaw and they go under their chin and go down the sides of their neck. And you'll feel this groove that is kind of deep. That's where the vagus nerve is sitting. And so you want to massage that and you just go down the path, stroking it, and it'll help calm their breathing. And usually what happens is their head will droop and you'll know that they're really enjoying that. When you get to the chest, you're going to go in a light circular motion and you're going to kind of go first one way and then the other way and then go back the other way. And what that does is it turns on, and in this chart it says baroreceptors. It's the nerves that feel pressure. That's all it is. That's the same effect that a undershirt does. It creates the pressure and turns those nerves on, which helps them relax their muscles in their chest and back. When you stroke their spine, you want to start right up under their ears and go alongside their neck. And then you're going to stroke on either side of the spine, not on top of the bones. Just keep those, you'll feel the muscle, kind of a little bit of a bump all the way down. And you can go in circular motion, or you can just stroke with a little bit of pressure. And if you can get into like just a real regular stroke, they usually go to sleep with that, believe it or not. That's the one that knocks them out. When you pet their side or their ribs, it isn't about the stroke, it's about the pressure. And so instead of making it a light stroke when you're hitting their side, you want to do a deep, slow stroke. And that helps their diaphragm trigger properly and helps them relax deeply. It also, weirdly enough, helps them feel their body better. It centers them more in their body. And I don't know if you know this, but dogs don't know they have hind legs unless they've done agility. They actually don't really know how all that stuff works together. And you can see it when a dog goes over an agility dog walk the first time. Their hind end is kind of swinging out to the side. And when you're doing this kind of massage or you're teaching them a sport, they're learning to integrate their whole body, which also keeps them confident and relaxed. Okay, let's talk about the hard stuff, roommates. I know most of you have pets, other pets, and I've worked with people who have had iguanas in the house, who have had large birds, but usually it's a cat or another dog or both. And so we're going to talk about how you can get your new foster dog or your new adopted dog to integrate with these animals. I know that Michelle has a handout for both dogs meeting dogs and dogs meeting cats. And it's excellent. And so definitely get that. I know it comes in the package, but refer to that if you have a cat. So we're going to go over this kind of briefly, but then I'm going to hit on the stuff that's crucial. So the most important thing in a dog's body is their nose. And so when they are about to meet a new animal, how the animal smells gives them tons of information. And so if they meet this dog and they have never smelt the dog before, they're actually more suspicious, more aware, and a little bit afraid until they can identify the dog regularly. So one of the best things you can do when you're doing the decompression days is swap things that smell like the dogs, and they get to smell each other without actually greeting each other. You can leave a blanket in both places and then trade the blankets. You can trade toys that are fabric if you don't think they'll destroy them. You can trade. If they have a collar, you can trade and just let them sniff the collars. You introduce them to it. That's going to help them get to know that dog before they have to confront them and see them. And it really will reduce their stress. You can do the same thing with dog and cat. Let them smell the cat bed or the cat blanket. And you do it a couple times over that depression period. Oh, sorry, compression period. That's a slip. And you do that, if you can, several times a day, or you just leave the object in there for a couple of hours. It will help them regulate and kind of figure out what's going on in their environment. When you're ready for them to meet, do not let them meet in the house. You want them to meet outside of the house on neutral turf. So not in the backyard, not in the front yard. You want to go for a walk where you're pretty far apart so that the dogs are almost ignoring each other. And you have someone with your dog and someone with the foster dog, and you're going to walk down the street and slowly move towards each other. So you're walking parallel. And that movement is dictated by how excited the dogs are. If they start to get excited and interested in each other, you go wide again. So you just want them to get used to moving with that other dog. Once they figure out that we're all moving together, there's kind of like okay, I guess we're a pack. I guess we're a family. It helps them. You don't want them to sniff and greet on that walk. You just want them to walk together. Then you're going to return home and you're going to let the resident dog go into the house and go as far away from the front door as possible. And then you're going to bring the new dog in and you're going to have them both on leash. Do not take them off leash. And you're going to end up sitting somewhere in the house where your dogs can see each other, but they're not right next to each other. You can use treats, but only if you're really far apart. So this is really a rare thing. You really don't want to use treats in this type of training. Someone was going to ask something. Nope. Okay. The controlled greet, the ideal greet for a dog is that they sniff each other. So if you see dogs that are healthy, they don't go right to the nose. They actually go and curl and sniff each other's behinds first. So they don't actually come straight at each other. It's rude. So the ideal greet is that they are coming parallel and passing each other instead of head on. If they're doing well, they can greet off leash in the yard. And that actually reduces the barrier. I know your behavior team has more advice on that, but I think the most important thing to remember is don't just let them meet in the house without any controls. Please have them meet outside first. If they're a little bit antsy, you can go into the yard first instead of in the house. So you can go from the walk to the yard and then the house. So you're kind of looking at their body language and how they feel about each other. They don't have to meet that first parallel walk. You can do days of parallel walks before they actually get to see each other. Okay. If there are any toys, high value items, blankets, food bowls, water bowls in the space when they're learning to know each other, you will probably have resource guarding. Dogs also resource guard space. So if they go through like a narrow threshold or like between the coffee table and the couch, sometimes those narrow spaces can trigger stress in a fight. So you want to make sure you regulate that too. You've got them under control. For cats, it's almost the same thing, except you don't take them for a walk. You want to make sure they are completely separated and that the dog gets a chance to smell the cat. So do that swap. When you're ready for the dog to see the cat, you want the dog on a leash, the cat not on a leash, so the cat can move away whenever they want. You want to introduce them several times over days where they get to see each other before the dog gets within 10 feet, 20 feet of that cat. So the distance has to do with how calm the dog is. So you're going to gauge, can the dog just sit and watch? This is a good distance. If I move closer, is the dog really intense or is he starting to get excited? You're too close. And you want to make sure you're working in that distance where the dog is calm, or you'll be training the dog to wait, just wait until they can get off the leash to get the cat. So you want to make sure that they're learning that they have to be relaxed and they're not going to get that cat. If the cat runs, the dog will probably chase. So dog needs to be on a leash. That's the first thing. The other thing is the cat needs safe space. They need to be able to go up away from the dog. They need to be able to go over a baby gate. or up onto a counter if you allow that, but they have to have a place to escape. And so when you're setting up your house and you're figuring out the spaces, you have to consider, how can my cat get out of here? Sometimes if you have a baby gate on a hall or a door, you can raise it off the floor so there's room for the cat to scoot under, but the dog can't go under. So you're going to gauge that. Be sure you have cat-only spaces, so your cat could maybe be in the bedroom or a spare room, and they never have to deal with the dog initially, so they aren't feeling pressured. Okay. And finally, this is my advice. If you think you're going slow, go slower. It's really meant to be slow, slow, slow.
That's my favorite piece.
Thank you.
I always say, when nothing bad will happen by being overly cautious.
Absolutely.
But if you throw caution to the wind, bad things will happen.
Yep. And the other thing is management fails. And so try to have several layers of management. So for instance, if you have a baby gate and the leash, probably not going to get the cat. Okay. But if you just have the leash and you drop it, your dog could get the cat. So you want to have 2 layers if you can. I'm just going to mention this great stuff from Lily Chin about dog body language. It's really important to learn this stuff. You can get it from the slide, but I think things to look for is you can just do it this way. If the dog is stiff and staring, they're feeling like they could react or be aggressive, or they're going to be very, moving towards the threat. If they're leaning back, they're afraid. So if they're forward, they might aggress. If they're leaning back, they're stressed. The more stiff a dog is, the more stressed they are, the more loose their body, the more excited and happy and pliant they are. I want to look for the licks, those quick licks. That means they're stressed. And look for turning away. If they're turning away from you or the other thing, they're trying to say, I don't want interaction. So those are some thumbnails for it. We are going to do a dog body language seminar because there's so much to it. I couldn't even barely cover it here. All right, let's talk about resource guarding. That's probably the #1 problem with new dogs, is this idea of mine. Now, resource guarding is natural. It's what we all do. We actually do protect our own resources. Dogs protect them too. It's not a problem unless it's going to be a tension over those items. So if a dog decides to growl when they have an item and you punish that, you're increasing the tension. And so now the dog is actually thinking, they're going to take it away from me for sure. Instead, if they have an object and they growl, what you want to do is give them space, and then you could swap treats, give them a treat for the item, or you just give them time to become bored with it. Let it go. If you have 2 dogs and there's resource guarding, that was a management failure. There should not be any objects, items, food, bowls in the space for the dogs to have a guarding problem. How you handle it is by preventing it. That's the most important part. If guarding happens, remain calm, lower the temperature in the room. You can use food to draw a dog away. You can remove the dog that's causing the stress. And then you can trade the dog that has the item for something that's even better. Also talk to your behavior group on this too, because there's some really great methods to do that. But honestly, guarding is normal. However, when they guard, how you react will determine if they continue to go through this loop or they begin to let it go. And if they become serious, you really do need behavior intervention, because this could lead to fights. And once the dogs have decided to fight over things, it's really going to be hard to have harmony in that household.
One thing I just want to touch on here real quick, because we do see this less and less as we've really been trying, but we used to see it more where people would think that they needed to test if the dog was a resource guarder, touch the food bowl, wiggle their fingers in the food, touch the dog when they're eating. And we actually, on our foster report, say that in big letters: don't ever mess with the dog when they're eating. Just let them eat in peace.
Yes.
Because we don't want to there's no reason to test the dog.
Yes. Thank you so much for bringing it up. we're going to do a resource guarding workshop. So we're
Yeah.
going to go into that in depth. But you're right. When people say, well, I was able to take the bowl away. Hey, listen, if I'm eating dinner and you reach over and grab my plate, I'll bite you. I mean, that's it's rude, right? So this isn't a test of how good the dog is. You're actually creating a situation where the dog is suspicious of you because you're interrupting their meals, and they can increase resource guarding. You could take a dog that doesn't guard and make one that does by doing that. So don't test the dog for resource guarding, but prevent it by making sure those things are out of the way. Pick up the food bowls after meals. Don't leave them out, okay? If they start to guard the water bowl, put it down in, have them make turns in the water bowl. But don't leave those food bowls out. That is a really great way to have a resource guarding situation. All right, we're getting to the point where we're going to make a plan. If you don't plan, then you end up being behind the 8 ball, and you're always going, oh my gosh, what do I do next with this dog? And what I've developed for your group is a planner that runs you through all the scenarios we just covered and asks questions to help you develop and have a clear plan of the household, how it's set up, how you're going to interact with the dog. And you share that plan with the household. Everybody that's in the house should know the plan or be able to see it and even help shape it. The plan has checklists for you for making sure certain places are set or things you need to get. And it's not that you need to get all of those things on the checklist, but it has some ideas for you. Now, this is actually a short version to get you thinking, okay? And this is where your pen and paper are gonna come in handy. You can choose one of these things on the sample questions, and I'm gonna run them down. But I'd like you to think about it and maybe jot down some ideas. The first question is, where would you create a sanctuary space for your new dog, your new foster, your new adopted dog? And if you have dogs now, would you create one for your dogs? And that next bullet, it should be is you have a space that's quiet? Is it dog proofed? Can they get into trouble? Is it away from foot traffic and noise? So think about your sanctuary space and think about how you would create that or where. Another thing you could talk about or write about would be who's in charge of your daily care. Like who's going to be feeding, who's going to be walking, who's going to have outdoor time, who's going to supervise in the house, who's going to ensure the dog has downtime. And I'm telling you right now, if you have a family and all of that is you, that's going to be stressful. And so when you sit down with your family to create this plan, they need to volunteer for some stuff too, or you need to figure out how to portion time. It is really hard to foster and adopt because the dogs have, emotional issues. They're learning the new environment and you need support. The next one to write or choose would be what's your rhythm of your day and how could you make these routine spaces work? And if you work and can't do the stuff in the middle, that means the dog has been in the confined space for maybe too long. I do know, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong. Is yours a 6 hours in any confined space?
We really don't want more than 4.
4, great, thank you. I was trying to remember. 4 is, to me,
That's
reasonable.
For an adult dog. Puppies are less.
That's different, yeah. But that's really reasonable. And if you think about, holding your bladder for 4 hours or being bored for 4 hours, do you remember high school? You were bored for 4 hours, right? It's terrible. So think about how you're going to manage time and space and enrichment for the dog. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes, jot things down, no full sentences, just ideas. And I'll ask you to share.
I'll share just because we do this to kind of get the ball rolling. We have a sanctuary space for one of our dogs that we call, it's my husband's office that doubles as what we call Breck's room. And so he eats in there. He has to have, when we go on a walk and come back from a walk, he has to have decompression time. And if he gets a bully stick or a lick mat or a Kong or something. So we've created that space. It used to be a crate when he was younger, and then he started becoming reactive in the crate, and we realized that wasn't working anymore.
Right.
So we created his space as a room, and sometimes we can put the gate up and he can come out and hang out in the hallway a little bit, or sometimes we just close the door and my husband will hang out in there with him, or sometimes not. It just depends on what has happened. But that's his decompression room, and that's his safe space. And and that's been going on now for like 5 years. I mean, so it's that's his area, and that's where he's most comfortable, is in his decompression room.
I love that. I fostered a Yorkie that is now part of our family, and she would choose a side table by our couch that was in a corner, and she was always hiding under there. And so I put a bed under there. I put a diffuser under there. I put some toys under there. I put a looky mat against the wall in there. And it was like, she was excited. She's like, oh, you fixed up my apartment. She was so happy. So the dog can choose the space, and then you can fix it up for them. Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes. I mean, I'm not going to lie, because initially for us, the thought of, oh my gosh, he's over there by himself.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, if you know me, you've heard me say this, I'm the one that has separation anxiety from my animals. And so, it was hard, but once we realized this is what was best for him, and he's perfectly fine. He needs that space just to be on his own, and nobody's in his way, and he doesn't have to worry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Would anyone else like to share? I know that we're over time, and I respect your time. If you don't want to share, that's absolutely fine, and we'll move on. But if you have any great ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Nobody's going to share.
Okay,
No.
Carolyn,
Go for it, Carolyn.
Carolyn, you're on mute. We can't hear.
Right. I was trying to figure out how to go off mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. One of the things that we've got a safe place or sanctuary place that we keep most of our set up for our fosters, but also I found that for especially the foster we have now, the morning routine, setting up the routine, I think is so important, and it has really helped her so much. And it had to do with the massaging and allowing her to approach me, and as all the body language you were talking about, Debbie, and she just it is wonderful to just see her, like you were saying, melt. And so for us, that morning routine is so important for her, just to set the stage for the day. And I know not all dogs are that way. Our resident dog, all he wants to do is go on that morning walk. So for him, that's his morning routine. So yeah, I've recognized how important those routines are in their development. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I know Star is just blossoming. Thank you so much. Cindy, you had your hand up. Did you want to contribute?
Yes. I brought home a puppy probably about 5 years, almost 7 years ago, and she was pretty abused. We were trying to keep her calm, but she was real reactive. And so what we did was we took an X pin apart, and I had like a 300 square foot kitchen, and I moved everything off the counters, and I put her water bowl in there, and I put the X pin on one end of the kitchen and the X pin on the other. So we now call it her kitschy kitschy. And so I tell her, go to your kitschy kitschy. So that's what she does. She's going to be 7 in November. And when she needs to decompress, that's where I find her, is in the kitschy kitschy. We don't have to put the pins up anymore, but that's where she goes.
Yeah, I wish humans had these. Like, can I go to my kitschy kitschy?
I know. I want to go to my kitschy kitschy too. but all the other dogs leave her alone. They know that's her kitty, and let River go to her kitty.
That's so cute and awesome. I love that. And I love that she knows that that's her space and the dogs have decided to respect that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's worked really well.
I love it.
You know, you mentioned Star, and some of you know this and some of you may not, but Star is a retired breeding dog that Carolyn Howe has brought into her home now, fostering for a few months. And she has had a lot of anxiety and a lot of challenges with confidence and trust. So she's been working with Devi now for several weeks, and we've introduced behavior modification through medication. But just even in the last week, well, the last week and a half, we've brought in 3 more retired breeding dogs. 2 today just went to their foster home. And Kathy Mead, I think, is still on here, who has one of those retired breeding dogs that just came in today. We have another one coming in a couple of days. And
Wow.
So we've seen more of those dogs in the last 6 months. But it's not just those dogs that, you know, come in that are shut down, scared, nervous. I mean, it can be somebody who owned this dog for a couple of years and the dog just never left the backyard.
Yep.
Which is very common.
Right.
What we see. I say this all the time, we're blessed and we're cursed because they're golden retrievers. And the expectation on golden retrievers sometimes is not fair because the expectation is, well, they're golden retrievers. And so, you know, they're expected to be a certain way, but we need to remember to give them grace it's okay to remember that they aren't always going to be like what we see on TV.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, the Goldens, they mask how they feel sometimes. And so really paying attention to a quiet Golden will help you figure out what's going on for them too. I'm going to skip Q&A and just flip it. So the people who need to go, I'm going to get the last slide so you have information, and then we'll come back to Q&A. So I want to thank you for being on the call today and for joining us. I love working with your organization. And if you need help with your dog, your personal own dog, we are here for you. And there's some information. And remember that you have an amazing support team with the behavior team and the medical team with Michelle. So if you have a foster dog or if you're having trouble with your adopted dog, be sure to reach out to them. They're there for you. And I included this quote that I really love. And it says, being hero to someone, even if it is just a dog, is a feeling like no other. Though it can be frustrating, it can be the most rewarding thing to give someone a second chance at life. And that's what you're all doing. You are saving lives, and I appreciate you.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Now, I'm going to open the floor to Q&A. If you are in a hurry or done, or we've gone over time, I apologize for going over time, but I'm here to answer questions. You can ask me anything about any dog or about this subject, ask the trainer. And this is just my time for you. I'm going to stop recording now though, so you can ask anything and no one will know.
I have